Welcome to the second part in our three-part series, Strategies for Business Continuation. Last week's workshop about succession planning was nothing short of amazing. Great content. And even since then, we've had a lot of follow-up questions. So if you didn't watch it, were not able to attend, or have not watched the first episode, make sure to go back and check it out on Mercadian's YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, or on my YouTube channel. My name is Michael Wardy. I'm a certified financial planner and regional director here at Source Advisors, where we work with our clients and their CPAs to identify and maximize tax incentive programs such as the Research and Development Tax Credit, cost segregation, and energy efficient incentive programs. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my co-partners in this broadcast series. First, I'd like to introduce Lee Boss. Lee takes a proactive, client-facing approach in business. He takes the time to get to know his clients, as well as their needs and goals. As a managing director and chair of the Audit and Assurance and Private Company Services Group, Lee acts as a resource and technical leader for his clients and Mercadian. I'd also like to introduce Ross Karp. Ross is a certified long-term care specialist who is dedicated to the planning and implementation of a strong protection portfolio for individuals and business owners in order to protect against the unexpected. These include, but they're not limited to, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care, as well as group benefits. As a broker, Ross works with major carriers to find the appropriate solutions for each individual situation. Gentlemen, once again, welcome.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thanks. So this week's episode, we're going to piggyback off of what last week's episode was in succession planning and discuss focus on retention, protection, and succession. Just to start out with, let's get right into it. What are the benefits to recognizing and nurturing key personnel? And I'll throw that to either one of you. Who wants to start?
Sure, Michael, I can jump into that one. I think it actually piggybacks well on our first discussion about succession planning and how, with a succession plan, the goal is obviously to build your team and build the enterprise value of the organization. I think critical to that is really focusing on your key employees, identifying who those people are. It's going to be the next in the reins, essentially, to help steer the business to its next chapter. So I think it's really critical to identify those key personnel, and oftentimes there may be multiple key personnel, maybe someone even down the next tier that you need to consider, depending on how much time you have in the planning process. But it's really important to get them engaged so that they understand, one, that they're key to the success of the organization, that there's a path forward for them. I think just overall enhancing employee engagement is just such a key critical topic. And as I think about it with succession planning, if it's going to be an internal succession plan, it's really critical for the owner or the ownership group to essentially make themselves irrelevant in some ways. And I think that's a bit of an uncomfortable concept for business. I think, I ultimately want to make myself somewhat irrelevant to this business. But if you think about it, that's really going to build the value and really create a business that will sustain upon itself, which I think is ultimately the goal of succession planning. And what business owner doesn't want to have a better work-life balance? I haven't heard too many business owners say, my ultimate goal in life is just to work in this business until I don't enjoy life. I, basically just work all the time. So I think those are really some key values there. So, Ross, I don't know if you have, we've talked before, any kind of input on that too.
Yeah, I think the other part of the equation here is, once you've identified them, these key employees that are vital to the business, I think you have to put things in place to train them, let them know how vital they are, setting them up for future success and advancement, because that's also going to help you retain them. When you have key people, the stability of the company revolves around maintaining that. And if you just have a revolving door of people coming in and out, that's not healthy for the business. So you have to train them, like you said, they have to know that there's a career path and an opportunity upward, but also you have to make it that they don't want to leave on top of that opportunity.
That makes sense. So you bring people in, you have the potential for a growth opportunity. What are some methods? What can you do to help retain those key personnel and show that they're valued and that they truly do stand out? How do you approach that?
So, Michael, I guess some of the thoughts I have on that I've seen work well with clients is really, one, I think, as Ross indicated, really articulating to those to your key people that they are critical, and then developing those training programs and mentoring programs. So I think ultimately you want to make your key people feel special, that they make an impact, that they can make a difference, and really help them make that difference. So I think a lot of it ties into like really developing that plan for your people about, how are you going to mentor them? How are they going to shadow you in certain key things? So bringing them into, some really key decisions or meetings and things like that. Often, the business owner has really close relationships with the customers. So, bringing those key people into those meetings with prospective clients, customers, with actual customers, getting them really engaged and involved in the business so that they can really learn the ropes. I think that's really like one of the most foundational things that you can put in place. But absent that, I think there's a lot of other like incentive type programs that really help reward your key employees and incentivize them to perform and to continue to grow and nurture. In things such as, you can have a profit sharing, plan, such as, you have your traditional 401k type plans. We can actually have plans that have a profit sharing element. So depending on how well the business does, you can make an additional contribution to their retirement plans, which is really great. That generally rewards a broader base of your employees. It's not targeted to specific employees. But there's other things that can be done, like that a lot of clients have what we call more phantom ownership plans, where maybe that employee doesn't have an actual ownership interest in the business, but you can actually create a plan that kind of mimics that, more like a synthetic type ownership, which is I've seen work very well with clients where, depending upon how the business has grown in value or based on profitability, there's kind of an award that's provided to that employee. And often there's kind of a vesting schedule. So maybe that award vests over a 3-year period or 5-year period. So, they're getting rewarded today for that contribution and the growth in enterprise value and profitability, but it kind of gives them that carrot, but also that stick to stay on and kind of see that through. So those are some of the things that I've seen from more of an incentive plan basis that work very well. I mean, obviously I have stock option plans and things like that. If, your corporations that can also accomplish that same goal, but it's really finding ways to reward, and really that what I'd call the carrot and maybe the stick approach to it in some ways.
Sounds good. Ross, any thoughts?
Yeah, so and I just want to piggyback off of that is, look, companies are going to put in 401k plans and they're going to do a lot of these things. They're going to have health benefits, and there's going to be sometimes group disability insurance and group life coverage, but those are for the masses. That's for everybody. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you have these key employees, you want to set something up that's over and above, that shows them that they're valued more than everybody else. So you're giving them this extra incentive or bonus. There are ways, and just to clarify, anything that we're going to say really does revolve around how is your company set up. Mm-hmm. So I just want to throw that disclaimer out there that this, some of the recommendations we're making are not blanket recommendations, and that you really do need to, to reinforce what we said last time, you really do need to get your team together to make sure that it's right for you. So, we may be saying something, but if your company is set up a certain way, it may not apply, or it may apply. There may be some things that are more valuable that you can use strategically. So anything that we say, I just want to throw the caveat out there that, definitely make sure you talk to your team of advisors and don't just run out and do this, because it's not cookie cutter. But with that said, you know, a lot of times what we want to show is our key employees that we do value them. They are special to us, and we kind of want to link them to us and help keep them and retain them. So, you know, there are bonus plans that we can do as companies where we're giving these executives something outside of the norm, and, you know, the company gets to write it off. And they usually what they're doing is that any costs involved, they're passing it on to the key employee, so that, you know, it becomes part of their taxable income. But you can always tax that up so that, you know, they're made whole and give them the money for it. And a lot of things that we've seen companies do and work with, where they'll put a cash value whole life policy in place with those employees. So, you know, they'll buy them this whole life policy. The company will pay it through this bonus structure, but the employee is the owner. You know, they can name the beneficiary, and they have full access to the cash value, you know, when they need it. And the goal here is obviously to give them this incentive that, hey, you have this life insurance, but it's also growing tax deferred, and this cash value that's accumulating, so that's there if you need it later on, and to help supplement your retirement. And because it's outside of the traditional 401k platforms, you could do more than you would do, because you're just doing it for a select few. So it doesn't go with the testing. So there's a lot more flexibility that goes in there. So again, that's a great bonus if you think about it. You're getting this life insurance, which is accumulating in value and cash value that you can have later on. So that's one benefit. You know, and again, with that said, a lot of companies will choose to do it as a short pay benefit, you know, policy. So, you know, we're going to pay this for 10 years, and then it's a fully paid up policy. So the employee knows, if I stay 10 years at least, I'm going to have this paid up policy, and I don't have to put anything into it. Where if they leave early, they've got this policy that they're going to have to pay to continue. Or if they cancel it, you know, any cash value that's in there that they take out could create an additional taxable event. So those are some incentives for them to stay on, you know, longer. So again, short-term pays are important here too, because as the business owner, you want to know that there's an end date to what you're putting into it. Another thing that, you know, employers can do, is, you know, executive disability insurance. A lot of times the disability that you've done for the group has caps and limits, and doesn't have all the features. But as you have your key employees, obviously they're making more. They may have a gap in coverage. So if the policy, let's say that the group disability covers the first, you know, $5,000 a month, that's going to cover people making $100,000 and under. But your key employees, if they're making more than that, they've got a gap in their protection. So you could put an executive disability plan in place for them, which can help make up the difference. And again, going through the bonus strategy, so that they're not paying out of pocket. So again, just little additional things that you're doing for them that helps them realize that they stand out in your mind, that you're trying to do something for them. And again, there's a lot more features and benefits with an individual plan than there are for the group plans in general.
So we may have gone down the opposite road, but even before we get to all that, how does a business owner or an executive find the right person? And I don't, maybe there isn't the right answer, but is there a way for somebody to say, we need to transition this, we need to start now? Where do they start? I know they build their team, their advisement team, but how do they find somebody? I'm sure they start in the beginning looking inside, but then what from there? If you guys can share any insight, examples, I'm sure that people are sitting there saying, how do we do this? Where do we start? And that's a good question that you really want to launch off of.
Yeah, Michael, I've been involved in a lot of exit and succession planning exercises with clients, and as well as for our own firm going through these exercises. So we kind of, you know, we sit on both sides of the table and this in these exercises, universal, right? Which is, you know, being stirred by a lot of different things, aging demographic, you know, boomers looking to retire and so forth. But I think it's really critical, in the business that you take an inventory of kind of all your key. One is what the requirements are for the business. What are the leadership roles that need to be filled? And then we kind of take a look at our, call it inventory, but maybe that's not the right term exactly for it, but our inventory of personnel that we have available. So we kind of have this skill set requirement and the needs. And this is also looking out into the future. So I think it's important to not only say where are we at today, but where is this business going in the next 5 to 10 to 15, 20 years? What are the real skill set needs that we have as a business and as we continue to grow? And then inventory your existing talent. And what we like to do is call handicap the race. So that's actually looking at those key personnel and making kind of an assessment of, are they where they need to be at this point? Do we think that they can develop, they have the skills today, or that they can develop those skills in the future, and kind of do a probability assessment? What's the probability of that? And what type of additional support may they need to get there? And then also, and that's where we kind of look maybe a next tier down, in leadership to identify additional candidates. So maybe it's not just one employee that could fill that key role, but maybe there's several. So it's really going through that exercise very holistically. And I think, it's a very thought out approach. The other approach you have to consider is, are there flight risks? Are there chances that, based on your key leader today, that they may not be here a few years from now? And I think that then ties into, what can we do to keep them? What are the things that we can do to incentivize and reward and develop them to that next level? But we really see it really key as kind of assessing, initially doing that needs assessment and that existing resource, kind of the needs versus what your existing talent grid looks like. I would say it's really critical, as I talked about, looking out into the future, because we all know that businesses have changed significantly. If we look the way each one of our businesses were 10 years ago, it's drastically different today. So the needs 10 years out could be significantly different. For example, focuses on innovation, how technology will continue to evolve the business. Do you need someone inside that's more an innovative type person? Maybe that was not something that the business necessarily needed several years ago, but it's really key now. So, and you may find that there's gaps. You likely will in some of those. So then it's a question, can we build that talent, or is that some talent that we may need to seek and, actually recruit for? And then a question of, when do you start recruiting for that? If you can't identify that. And I think another key concept is just to make sure that, this is an evolving process. So it's not like you do this on day one and you forget about it, and then 10 years later, it has to be looked at on a continual basis. We recommend always, it's an annual look and assessment, because things do evolve and change. A great question.
Thank you. Ross, any other points on that?
I mean, I think Lee hit everything right on the nail. Like all the things that I was thinking about that I would have jumped in with, Lee addressed and nailed perfectly.
Perfect.
The same wavelength today.
We're flowing on the right road. So do business owners, as they're planning for this, do they talk about having the primary person, this is going to be our go-to person, but then they also have a backup and a backup to that for the just in case, to protect against somebody leaving or taking off? Or is it just, this is our person, we're sticking with them, and then that should work? What have you guys seen?
I would say, Michael, often as you go through this exercise, what you ultimately identify is that there's probably a key person, like in that downwind. But often when we look at it again, because another key thing is we look at, and I failed to mention this, but also kind of what their current age profile is,
Yeah.
So succession planning with clients where, we'll identify the key personnel, and they say, okay, they're currently, 40, 38 years old. But, there's assessment of, what's their interest in this role, right? Is this somebody that they really want to be the chief executive officer? Do they have that stomach? Is that their interest? And two, what's ultimately their maybe outlook for retirement? So, we've identified people that, they may only have a 10-year career path left. So although they may be the primary person on a short run basis, you really have to look another tier down and try to identify who might be behind them at some point. So it's not like a simple, A then B then C type, planning scenario. But yeah, I think you have to really think about it, like really plan it, really think thoroughly about it. Involving, I should say, involving like your key people also in that. I mean, you got to have kind of your key all ownership group make this assessment. With also some of your key leadership group. And then from there, having the discussions with those key personnel.
So oftentimes when you have a generational business, the parents say, my kids are taking over the business. Do you guys ever give additional insight? Either one of you give additional thoughts? And I'm sure this is a difficult conversation to have with a client who says, my kids are taking over, and you clearly see that the kids are not interested, but the parents don't want to hear it. Do you guys get involved in those hard to have conversations, or how do you approach it? What would be the best, I guess, for anybody watching, what would be your best advice when you see that, but they may not?
It's on the insurance side, we don't get involved in those conversations as deeply. That we leave that more for the attorneys, the accounting team, and even the business coaches and advisors. So we don't really delve that deeply into that issue. We could, if we see something, we might make some subtle hints, like, to try to push it. Have you had that conversation with your child? Is this definitely what they want? Like if we see the child rolling their eyes, like, yeah, this is not what I want, it, but from our perspective, we don't get involved on that end. Lee, that might be something you see more and get involved in more than we would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a really difficult, it is challenging, but yeah, I mean, we definitely would say, listen, those conversations are really critical, and really getting an assessment of, one is, their aptitude and their interest in that, and then your confidence in them. And, it does evolve, often when children are involved in a business, they may not always be the heir apparent on day one.
Right.
It's going to take some time. It's going to take some mentoring. They're going to learn the aspects of the business that they enjoy the most. So, but it's really critical to have those conversations, that heart to heart, and make that assessment. Maybe they're not going to be the chief executive officer or the president of the business, but maybe really their role is to be a chief financial officer or an operational or sales related or some other focus in the business. And that's okay. I think it's really trying to play to their strengths and then identifying then where are the gaps, and frankly, a lot of times it's so many businesses we talk to that, their children don't want to be involved in the business. So finding that out, as Ross was talking about, the sooner the better, so that you can then develop your strategy accordingly.
Encouraging communication, I think, is key. Like it's funny because we are technically outsiders, and even though we're like advisors to companies, that is a tough conversation to have with a business owner who thinks, okay, they're building this up for their children, and you don't want to be the messenger who says to somebody, I don't think your kid's really interested.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person. So there's a tactical way to address it and have them and bring it out.
So the flip side, actually, that I've seen occur as well is where there's children that are involved or family involved in the business, and they really want to succeed the business. And they have the other question is, do my parents want to succeed it to me? And, are they going to succeed it internally? Or are they going to try to, they want to do an outright third party sale? So we've worked with businesses on both sides of that question, which is each have an interesting dynamic.
And I'm sure there's circumstances where like there's the child who's in the business and the parents running it the way they ran it forever and it's been working for them, but the child, as they see technology and advancements, have ideas that they want to push forward, but maybe the parent, who's the owner who calls the shots at this point, is a little hesitant on. So sometimes you see that generational headbutting, for lack of a better expression. where one really wants to take it in advance and the other one's a little hesitant.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like a business coach, could really, who's there advising the companies, there day in, day out, could really help navigate those waters.
Sure.
It's so true. So
Family businesses are so tough to transition, it's just so, how many
there's so many
it's the
scenarios.
second generation, and if it's third generation, that's like a huge success story. So, but all those issues make it compound the issue.
Yeah. And there's so many different scenarios. Just as we're talking, I'm thinking, what about this? What about this? Ultimately, it's getting your advisement team, like you guys have said in the other episode, get the advisement team in place. One last question though, before we go on, and we're getting to the bottom of the hour. Ross, you touched on some of the ways to protect the business and really to keep that key person entrenched and happy and interested. What about some strategies for protection against the not so positive issues, injury, illness, or death? Like, what do you guys see, and what are you guys recommending for businesses to protect the business from something happening to these key people that are transitioning?
Yeah, I think a business, when they start to identify these key employees and that they want to make sure that they keep, they really have to look at what is the cost to the company if something were to happen. If that employee was incapacitated, they couldn't come into work and they had to leave, or if there was a passing, what is the detriment to the business in dollars? Because if this happens, you have to replace that person. You have to train the person and get them up to speed. So you know that there is going to be value lost to the company. So companies will insure against that. They'll have key person policies in place on the disability and the life insurance side, so that if somebody gets hurt or passes or sick, there is the cash flow there to basically keep the company as whole as possible while they're recruiting, while they're training and getting these people up to speed. I mean, if you have somebody who's vital to the business, and let's say it's a new business person, and they bring in millions of dollars a year in new business, if something happens to them, somebody's not just going to walk in the door and hit the ground running and recoup those millions of dollars that could be lost. So you do have to insure and protect the company with that. And that does happen with life and disability insurance, where the company would own it, the company would pay for it. If something happens to this employee, they would get those proceeds, which would then help them go out, find the right person, so they're not doing things out of desperation. Yeah. When you have insurance, the great thing about it is it helps you to make decisions from a position of strength versus desperation, because you want to get, especially with a key employee, you want to get it right as quickly as possible and get that person running as quickly as possible. But you don't want to do it where you pick the wrong person and then you realize you picked the wrong person, then you're starting all over again.
Yep.
So that's where the insurance really helps the company strengthen themselves and make decisions from a position of strength versus desperation.
A great point.
Perfect.
And again, just to continue with that very quickly, obviously this is you have to keep we're going to go back to the reevaluating thing every couple of years. As a person's role grows, you may need more and more coverage on them over time. So again, reevaluating that, just as you would anything, is vital.
That's so true. All right. So key takeaways that I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Number one, identify vital employees, key employees, and that are really key to the success and the growth of the company, as well as the future management and potential ownership. Second thing that I heard, create incentive plans that lets them know, these key people, how much they are valued. And that'll also help in the retention and recruitment, as you guys both touched on. Third, protect the company from an unexpected loss of a key employee. And fourth, I will add in, which we touched on last week in the first episode, build your team, build your key advisory team. It's so important for this continued success of your business. Thank you again, both Lee and Ross for joining, for the audience, for the listeners, subscribers, for the viewers of this episode. This is great information, such powerful information, and so important for your business. Third episode, the final episode, is coming up on Wednesday, May 26th. Mark your calendar at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We will be sending out another invitation so you can register and log in there. It is going to be on business protection, and this will summarize and group everything that we've talked about together in that last episode. We look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Have a good day.
Thanks,
You
Lee.
too.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.